Can you believe this? I never thought I'd be saying something this wild out loud. But my ranch, my slice of hard-earned paradise got raided by cops. And why you ask, an HOA dispute of all things. They rolled up in vests, flashing guns, clutching a clipboard that screamed official, but every single bit of it was fake. Oh, the irony, they thought they were the ones setting a trap. But guess what? They waltzed right into mine, and I was ready. Let's rewind to the start of this madness. Have you ever chased a dream so long that when you finally grab it, you're almost afraid to believe it's real? That was me sprawled on the porch I built with my own two hands, sipping coffee that wasn't even grown on my land. Staring out at 120 acres of pure, unfiltered freedom, I earned every inch of this place through sweat scars and sheer grit. No bosses barking orders, no 4:00 a.m. Wake-up calls, no strangers screaming in my face, just me. My loyal dogs, my sassy goats, and a tractor that's probably seen more years than some of my creaky bones. And the silence, not the eerie kind that sets your nerves on edge, but the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket whispering, "You're home." I thought buying this ranch meant I was done with conflict. Huh, was I ever wrong? It all kicked off with a sign, some cheap white plastic thing zip-tied to my fence like it had every right to be there. Notice property under review. Simmons Valley HOA compliance required. I stood there dumbfounded, blinking at it for a full minute, waiting for it to sprout a mouth and explain itself. Spoiler alert, it didn't. So I yanked it down, tossed it into the fire barrel, and figured it was just some bored kids playing HOA dress-up. Big mistake. That was my first error, underestimating how far someone will go when they think a clipboard makes them king. My second mistake, thinking this Karen character would just give up. Because the very next day she showed up. Picture this: an SUV, the color of hospital walls, screeched onto my gravel drive, parked like it was staging a military maneuver. Out steps this woman decked out in pastel pink, pressed khakis and mirrored sunglasses, clutching a clipboard like it was her personal weapon. She didn't even glance at my land. She zeroed in on me like I was a puzzle she was itching to solve. "Hi there." She chirped, all fake sweetness, like we were about to swap banana bread recipes. I wiped my hands on a rag, leaned against the fence post, and drawled, "Can I help you? I'm Karen Simmons, HOA president." She announced like that title carried the weight of the world. "Just doing my rounds, thought I'd personally welcome you to the neighborhood." I blinked. "HOA, seriously?" Her smile widened, all teeth and no warmth. "Simmons Valley Homeowners Association. We're a chartered community coalition focused on maintaining visual and environmental standards across properties." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. "Lady, this is farmland. The only standard out here is not plowing into a cow," but she didn't even flinch. "Our bylaws cover fencing, height, structure, types, livestock ratios, and noise thresholds," she said, cool as a cucumber. "We're in an awareness phase now, but citations start at the end of the month." I stared at her, incredulous. "You're telling me you can cite a goat?" "Oh, we don't cite the goats," she replied, her voice dripping with saccharin. "Just their owners." Before I could fire back, she shoved a manila envelope at me labeled, "Welcome Packet Action Required," and spun on her orthopedic heels, strutting off like she'd just served me a court summons. I ripped it open right there, and my jaw dropped. Page after page of bogus regulations, diagrams of my barn photos, of my fencing circled in red from angles I didn't even know existed. Apparently my satellite dish was visible from the southern view quarter, and that was a visual obstruction. A visual obstruction. I didn't just toss it, I burned it, watching those ridiculous pages curl into ash. 2 days later, the signs were back, and they meant business. Bigger, laminated, zip-tied, higher one even stapled to my barn door. Under enforcement review, violations pending. I tore them down fuming. But this time they came back with nails. And it wasn't just signs anymore, now there were men. 2 of them, late 30s, decked out in matching khakis and vests with iron-on patches that read HOA Patrol. I watched from my porch as they strutted along my fence line, walkie-talkies crackling, clipboards in hand, acting like they were on a top-secret mission. One even pointed at my tractor and muttered into his mic like it was some kind of national security threat. I'd had enough. I stepped off the porch and they froze like deer hearing a shotgun cock. "Something I can help you with, boys," I called out my voice, calm but sharp. One of them, clearly nervous, stammered through a rehearsed line. We're conducting a compliance sweep under HOA protocol. I took a step closer. Got a badge. We operate under the Simmons Valley Charter, he mumbled. Great, I shot back. Then you're trespassing under the Callahan Property Charter. Get off my land. They scurried off, but not before one of them dropped his clipboard. I snatched it up, and what I found inside made my blood run cold. Patrol maps wrote, properties marked with red X's, mine labeled Alpha High Resistance. I snapped a photo and called my buddy in town, a sheriff's deputy. Heard of an HOA around here? I asked. Nope, he said. But I know Karen tried to find the feed store last year for rural noise disturbance. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some one-off prank. Karen had plans, big ones, and they didn't stop at laminated signs. We're talking fake websites, patrols, walkie-talkies, and who knows what else. I wasn't about to sit back and wait for her next move. I started prepping, not for war, but for whatever nonsense she'd throw my way. Motion sensors, trail cams, remote lights, nothing deadly, just enough to send a message, this land bites back. If they crossed my line again, they weren't getting a polite warning. And cross, they did, but this time they didn't bother knocking. They came before dawn, silent as ghosts with backup. Did they really think they could sneak onto my turf? You don't forget the sound of trouble trying to tiptoe. It's got a rhythm measured, careful like a heartbeat, just a tick too fast. I heard it before I saw them. The wind was dead, the sky pitch black. Not even my chickens stirring with their usual morning squawks. But that crunch on the gravel, too heavy for wind, too light for a truck, too coordinated for a deer trouble, was here. I didn't panic. Panic's for amateurs. I grabbed my boots, snatched my mug of yesterday's reheated coffee, and let muscle memory take over. I knew who it was. Karen's fake HOA troops, her clipboard commandos back for round two. I'd figured they'd try again, but this soon, bold move. I slipped into the kitchen, flicked off the interior lights, slowed my breathing, and listened. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Crunch. Multiple sets of boots. 5, maybe 6. I eased over to the side window. Out by the barn, 5 shadows slunk in a lazy arc, flashlights off radio earpieces in vests and khakis, making them look like wannabe soldiers. One guy, of course, had a clipboard, because even these paramilitary LARPers can't resist their paperwork. But here's the kicker, they were wearing headlamps now, strapped to their foreheads like they were coal miners or some budget special forces unit. I crouched low, scanning the scene. 3 of them peeled off toward the east fence where my goat Linda slept like the queen she is. 2 others lingered near the front gate. Then a voice crackled through one of their radios, half-whispered. Team Alpha in position. Begin sweep, target is presumed. Armed but compliant under Phase 1. Target armed, Phase 1. I chuckled, but it was a cold, hard sound. What do you even do when the neighborhood watch thinks they're raiding Osama bin Farmer? The laugh didn't reach my eyes, though. Something inside me had already shifted, that old hum kicking in, the one I hadn't felt since my days in Kandahar. My senses sharpened, my breath coiled tight in my lungs. Awareness, training, threat assessment, game on. I moved to the mudroom, slipped on my coat, the one with the emergency light trigger tucked in the pocket. I didn't need it, but oh, did I want to see their faces when they realized I was ready for them. They crossed the second fence, all quiet and cocky, until one of them tripped the wire. Click, and then boom! Not an explosion, but a glorious flood of light and sound. High-beam floodlights blazed on like I'd flipped a switch to summon the heavens. Sirens wailed from 4 different corners, and my barn lit up brighter than Times Square. 2 guys hit the deck, one screamed and dove behind the water trough, and another, he slammed right into Linda's enclosure. Worst mistake of his life, Linda, my fierce goat, rammed him in the thigh, flipped him over like a rag doll, and stood over him glaring like she was demanding an apology. I stepped onto the porch, calm as you please, sipping my coffee. Good morning, gentlemen, I called out, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Y'all planning to announce yourselves, or were you banking on the element of surprise? One of them straightened up clipboard. Guy, naturally, we are acting under HOA Emergency Code 7E to seize non-compliant property, he declared like he was reading from a script. Emergency Code 7A. I raised an eyebrow. What did you guys dream that up in a coloring book? He didn't even blink. We are empowered by community vote to remove unauthorized structures, reclaim misuse of land, and enforce property value security. Enforce it with that clipboard, huh? I shot back. Another guy shaking and sweating raised something that looked like a taser. This is a citizens enforcement zone, he stammered, his voice cracking. We are within operational bounds. I took one deliberate step down from the porch. You're in my yard armed, threatening to seize my property with fake laws you probably printed at the library. Clipboard guy thrust a folder at me. This document authorizes us. I snatched it, flipped through it, and nearly laughed. Half the pages were marked draft, one had a coffee stain, and get this, a chunk of melted cheese was stuck to the corner. This looks like a sleep-deprived 10th grader with control issues wrote it, I said, tossing it back. Then out of nowhere, gravel crunched, tires squealed, and a car roared up. Not one of theirs, thank God. It was Sheriff Langston, his red and blue lights flashing like a divine intervention. His squad car rolled in slow and loud, and those HOA goons froze like statues. Clipboard guy spun around barking. Abort too late, buddy. Langston stepped out, squinting into the chaos. One of the fake cops was still getting an earful from Linda, while another had his face buried in the dirt like that would save him. Langston locked eyes with me, deadpan Callahan. What the hell is going on here? Pre-re theater, my friend, I said, grinning. Opening act HOA SWAT team. Langston turned to the group, his voice all business, hands where I can see them. Drop the clipboards, one guy had the nerve to pipe up. We're acting under civilian compliance jurisdiction. Langston marched right over, ripped the badge off his vest, and held it up. Buddy, this says Compliance Officer Tier 2. You're lucky it doesn't say Mall Cop. Then he picked up their binder, leather-bound, homemade, ridiculously over the top. The cover read Simmons Valley Compliance Authority, Internal Codex. Langston flipped through it, revealing color-coded charts, rank structures, and Lord help me laminated pages. He read aloud, barely containing his disbelief. Class 1 violation, fencing misalignment. Class 2, unauthorized rooster activity. Class 3, hostile resident behavior. He slammed it shut. I've seen cults with fewer rules. One of the guys blurted out, we were told to enforce protocol. Langston's eyes flicked to me. By who I didn't hesitate. Karen. That was it. 3 arrests, 2 citations, and a full report filed with the county investigator. But the real gut punch, Langston found a list tucked inside that binder. A spreadsheet with names. Mine was highlighted in red, labeled obstructionist, high threat. Other names were crossed out. Langston let out a low whistle. You know any of these folks? Yeah, I said, my voice heavy. Neighbors 2 sold out this year, 1 went dark. This wasn't just a game anymore. Karen's operation was coordinated, targeted, and far bigger than I'd ever imagined. Can you even imagine the nerve of this woman? Sheriff Langston's words hit me like a punch to the gut. This isn't just HOA cosplay. This is coordinated, targeted, and downright sinister. He let out a heavy sigh, his eyes weary. I'm calling in a fraud investigator, maybe even the feds, but brace yourself, Callahan. Karen's doubling down. She's not backing off. Deep down, I already knew it. That very night, a certified letter slid into my mailbox, its crisp edges mocking me. From Karen, of course, she was suing me for hostile disruption of a sanctioned community action, undermining volunteer enforcement personnel, and get this, intentional obstruction of cooperative land reclamation. Can you believe the audacity? The worst part, she had a real lawyer. Not some small-town hack. Someone with deep pockets was bankrolling her. Someone with far more reach than a folding table and a clipboard. Tucked inside that envelope was a list of names, not just mine, not just my neighbors, but one name that stopped my heart, a name I knew better than my own. Someone I'd shared cold beers with, someone who'd helped me hammer nails into my barn. Next to it, in cold black ink, one word: informant. Betrayal doesn't even begin to cover it. They say power corrupts, but holy cow. Nobody warns you how fast it sinks its claws in when all someone's got is a clipboard and a thirst for control. Karen didn't just shrug off those arrests. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she doubled down, dragging the whole damn neighborhood into her twisted crusade. It started with flyers, but not the kind you'd expect. She didn't just slip them into mailboxes. She launched a full-on campaign, Grayscale printed with military precision clipped to plastic stakes and jabbed into the ground at the road's entrance, like some kind of battlefield signage. Each one screamed my name complete with an aerial shot of my property, probably snapped by a sneaky drone, labeled Zone B, non-compliant, high risk below, that bullet points laid out my so-called crimes: unauthorized livestock, illegal fencing configuration, documented verbal hostility to enforcement officers. And the kicker: subject has refused all attempts at reintegration. Neighbors are advised to avoid unsanctioned contact, social exile notices. Are you kidding me? I stood there staring at that flyer, my blood boiling. She wasn't just coming for me, she was trying to erase me. But the worst part, it worked. Can you imagine the sting of seeing neighbors who used to wave warmly now, avoiding my gaze like I was some kind of pariah? The guy at the feed store, who'd always thrown in a friendly nod, suddenly jacked up his prices without a word. And then, oh, this one heard a family who'd laughed and eaten burgers at my 4th of July cookout last year, posted in the community group, "We support order. We support community standards." If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the risk. I stood in my field staring at a sign whining about my hostile goats, and it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a petty feud anymore. Karen was building a regime, and I was her public enemy, number one. Then she took it to a whole new level with a rally right in her driveway. No chairs, no permits, just a flimsy fold-out table, a microphone, and a poster board screaming, "Emergency compliance briefing. Tier 3 response." I didn't hide. I stood across the street, arms crossed, watching the circus unfold. At least 15 people showed up, and let me tell you, the mood was tense. Some looked confused, others downright scared, and a few, God help me, were already sporting HOA-branded safety vests like they joined a cult. Karen tapped the mic, her voice cutting through the air. "We're under siege," she declared, "and it's coming from within." She held up one of her flyers, my property's photo plastered across it. "This resident has refused compliance for 3 consecutive review cycles. He's verbally threatened our officers. He's refused dialogue." Then she pointed right at me, her finger like a dagger. "He thinks he's untouchable, but no one is above the rules." She passed out those flyers like they were holy relics, preaching, "He calls it freedom. We call it negligence. We call it disorder." I couldn't hold back. "You call a goat screaming at 6:00 a.m. a security threat?" I shouted across the road. My voice dripping with disbelief. Karen didn't even glance my way. She just kept going. Effective immediately, the HOA is initiating a community isolation protocol. Residents are discouraged from contact, no favors, no support, no engagement. The crowd nodded, some even clapped, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just propaganda. She had followers, real followers, and they were drinking her Kool-Aid. My stomach churned. How had it come to this? Later that night, I found another notice in my mailbox, not mailed but laminated, like it was some kind of sacred decree. Resident classification Tier 3. Critical non-compliant. The demands: absurd remove, livestock paint, barn neutral gray, attend re-education seminar, submit apology statement to board, a re-education seminar. In Karen's garage, no less. The schedule even listed a session called Silent Fences, How Your Property Speaks for You. I nearly choked on my coffee. This was straight out of Orwell, but with a polo shirt and a superiority complex. It got darker from there. The next day, 2 of my trail cams went offline. Then a third, I checked the wiring, cut clean through. Langston came out, his face grim. "You think it's her?" he asked. "Who else knows where I hid those cams?" I replied, my voice tight. He nodded slowly. "She's not just posturing anymore, Callahan. This is war." That night, I spotted a white sedan parked 2 properties down, just sitting there unmoving. I grabbed my binoculars, tinted windows, no tags, engine idling. I started walking toward it, flashlight in hand. But before I could get close, the engine revved and it peeled out tires, spitting gravel. I traced the plates later. They led to something called Community Horizon Outreach. Guess who the director was, Karen? She'd built a shell nonprofit just to cover her creepy surveillance. And then, oh, this one broke my heart. There was Max, my border collie, 8 years old and smarter than half the people I've ever met. That night I heard him whimpering near the barn, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. I found him behind the ATV, shaking one paw, bleeding. He yelped when I touched it, a deep cut glass embedded in his flesh. I scoured the barn floor and found it jagged shards of green-brown glass, scattered near the rear door, hidden on purpose. My hands trembled as I picked him up, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. I've got you." I didn't yell, I didn't cry, but inside I was raging. Who would do this to an innocent dog? Langston showed up 20 minutes later, sweeping the area collecting samples. This wasn't an accident, he said, his voice low. This was a message, and he was right. Karen had crossed a line and I was done playing nice. The next day I went public and I went big. I uploaded everything: the video of the fake raid, the laughable seizure warrants her propaganda flyers, Max's injury surveillance logs, the HOA's ridiculous law book, and those laminated re-education guides. I captioned it, "When the HOA thinks they're the FBI." Within hours, the video blew up. Comments, shares, messages from rural homeowners across the country who'd faced the same tactics. Within 24 hours, it racked up over 300,000 views. People started waking up. Karen's online defenders vanished into thin air and half her compliance team bailed. But Karen, she wasn't done, not by a long shot. 2 days later, she showed up at my door, no clipboard, just a manila folder, her face cold as stone. "You think this is about goats," she hissed. I stayed silent, staring her down. "You think this ends with me?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You've kicked something you don't understand." She shoved the folder into my hands and walked away. I opened it and my heart sank. Printed emails, signed memos, a document labeled Regional Initiative Rural Behavioral Management Phase 2. Government seals names. I recognized people I'd worked with years ago. This wasn't just HOA nonsense anymore. This was federal, and it was huge. That folder didn't just point the finger at Karen. It exposed a sprawling network, a plan that went way beyond Simmons Valley. My name was there, marked as primary resistance node. They thought I'd be easy to silence. Oh, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I left that folder on my kitchen table for 6 hours, not because I was scared, but because I knew what it meant. When I finally opened it again, the weight of it hit me. Government headers, agency abbreviations, real formatting. Not the cheap stuff Karen churned out at the UPS store. The top page read, Rural Behavioral Management Phase 2. I stared at it, feeling like I was facing an old enemy, because in a way this wasn't just paperwork, it was doctrine, the kind I'd seen overseas back when my job wasn't about fighting, but reshaping communities. They called them post-conflict engagement zones, but we all knew the truth. It was control through soft power, change the signs, rewrite the rules, turn neighbors against each other. And now here it was, in a 3-ring binder, delivered by a woman whose idea of fun was code enforcement cosplay. How had it come to this? Langston pulled up 2 hours later, his cruiser kicking up dust. I didn't say a word, just slid the folder across the table. He opened it, flipping through page after page, his face growing darker. "Where'd you get this?" he asked. "She gave it to me on purpose," I said. "Told me I'd kick something. I couldn't stop." He closed the folder, his jaw tight, and called the county attorney. She arrived that same day, tough, sharp. No nonsense, with an investigator and a portable scanner in tow. They tore that folder apart, scanning every page, verifying headers, checking stamps. Then she fixed me with a hard stare. "Did you know this program? I knew the people who built it." I admitted. Her eyes widened. "You were in on this." "No," I said firmly, but I was in the room. The state moved fast. Within 24 hours, we had a warrant. Karen's name was now linked to at least 5 cases across county lines, all tied to false citations, impersonation, and real financial damage. The goal: land. Quietly push out rural owners, consolidate properties, enforce uniform standards through fear and bureaucracy. Karen wasn't the mastermind. She was the test pilot, the front woman for something much bigger. Langston and 2 agents rolled out the next morning. Warrant in hand, cruiser out front, dash cam rolling. They knocked on her door, nothing. Knocked again. A curtain twitched, but no answer. Finally, she opened it, that smug smirk plastered on her face. Clipboard in hand, like it was a shield. "Do you have a warrant?" she demanded. Langston held it up unflinching. "You're making a mistake," she sneered. "You first," he shot back, stepping inside. The search started in her study book's maps, a fake HOA ledger. But the real jackpot, a false panel in the bookshelf. Hiding a narrow doorway with no knob, just a sliding latch. Inside was a back office surgical in its precision walls, lined with binders. A whiteboard displayed names, faces, maps, schedules, rotation charts, and a bank of monitors all off. But three had paused camera feeds. One showed my barn. My skin crawled. How long had she been watching? There were 6 binders, each labeled like a dystopian playbook. Resident tier guide, compliance scripts, corrective language, index, psychological reinforcement, tactics, asset conversion model, phase 3. Strategy outline. Langston opened the first, and there I was, my name, my property, layout, my habits. You wake up around 4:50 most mornings. Feed animals by 6. Occasionally leave lights on in the front room past midnight. Rarely seen with visitors. Pattern rating, defiant autonomous vigilance. Langston looked at me stunned. "They were profiling you, not just me," I said grimly. He flipped further. 6 other names, other residents, all categorized. One was compliant, another exit achieved, and one pending disruption. That last one, she'd moved out last month. In the back, they found a wall map spanning 3 counties dotted with red, blue, and black pins, each coded P1 for probationary, P2 for persuasion, P3 for physical relocation. Encouraged, Langston stepped back, shaking his head. "This isn't an HOA, it's psychological warfare. We bagged everything, and the attorney filed charges that afternoon. Criminal harassment, wire fraud, identity manipulation, illegal surveillance, impersonating a public official, conspiracy to defraud." Karen's lawyer tried to spin it as a community experiment in grassroots cohesion, but Langston called it what it was, a cult with a mailing list. That night, a knock at my gate startled me. It was Jerry, the neighbor who'd stopped waving, looking like a broken man. I didn't know it would go this far. He mumbled, eyes on the ground. "You believed her?" I asked, my voice sharp. He didn't answer, just stared at the dirt. "She said if we didn't help enforce it, we'd be next." I nodded once, my heart heavy, and closed the gate. Trust once shattered doesn't glue back together so easily. Oh my God, can you believe what happened next? 2 days later, the county cracked open that last hard drive, and let me tell you, it blew the entire case wide open. It wasn't just about me anymore. There were files on 6 other properties with video reports, drone footage, fencing audits, and get this, even voice recordings snatched from casual porch conversations. These people weren't just after your land. They wanted to watch you, predict your every move, control you, and then erase you like you never existed. And Karen, she wasn't the mastermind, just a cog in a much bigger machine. One of the signatures on the Phase 2 proposal stopped me cold. An old intel officer I knew, retired, last seen consulting in D.C. I stared at that name for what felt like forever. Not because I was shocked, but because I knew exactly what kind of people they were. Ruthless, calculating, willing to do anything to keep their twisted blueprint from unraveling. How had I ended up in their crosshairs? Then there was one last drive labeled Phase 4 Contingency Locked, encrypted, its title alone sent chills down my spine. Phase 3 was all about control, but Phase 4, that meant they were planning for resistance, for failure, and they were ready to act. I had one shot left before this thing went national, and I was going to take it head on. No way was I letting them win. At 4:12 a.m., that damn drone came back, its low hum slicing through the silence. Different this time, faster, smaller, smarter. It didn't hover. It swept low over my barn roof, buzzed the tree line, and vanished into the dark. 15 minutes later, I found something chilling near the north fence. A perfectly symmetrical circle burned into the ground, black paint with 2 slashed lines cutting through it like an X. The same symbol Langston had found on the Clearwater property, the same one they used to mark their non-compliant targets. This wasn't just a warning. It was a marking, a declaration that they were coming for me. My heart pounded. What did they have planned? They didn't knock, didn't call, didn't send another of their ridiculous flyers. They just walked in bold as brass. 3 of them, no headlights, no vehicle in sight. I caught them on the southwest cam first. Their thermal signatures showed they'd been lurking in the woods for 20 minutes. Now they were creeping toward my driveway, dressed in black vests and boots. Walkie-talkies muted. One clutched a clipboard because of course he did, but the other two, they had rifles, real ones, clean and tightly slung. My pulse quickened, but panic. That's not my style. I shut my laptop, locked the barn, and strolled back to the porch, cool as a cucumber watching them in silence. They didn't say a word either, just stared me down. Then clipboard guy stepped forward, all business. "We're here for seizure protocol," he announced. I raised an eyebrow. "You think this is legal?" He didn't even blink. "You failed to comply with re-education notices. Your vehicle and property are listed as forfeitable under Emergency Clause B9. He waved a page from his folder like it was a royal decree. "You've been designated as a primary resistance node." Primary resistance node? Who even talks like that? The guy to his right was twitchy, constantly glancing at the trees, fidgeting with his rifle grip. The one on the left, though, two calm eyes, glassy, locked on the door behind me. "Not on me, you're outnumbered." Clipboard guy warned, "Don't make this hard." I took one step forward, my voice steady. "Tell me something. Who trained you?" He hesitated, and that's when I knew they weren't law. They weren't military. They were believers, brainwashed by Karen's playbook. My gut twisted. How deep did this go? They advanced another step. I stepped back, my fingers brushing the silent trigger on my watch. With a low hiss, steel barriers shot up from the driveway. Motion sensors pinged and floodlights roared to life. Not steady beams, but red strobes, disorienting, designed to throw them into chaos. Clipboard guy threw up an arm to shield his eyes, twitchy. Guy raised his rifle. Big mistake. My deck rig kicked in, and two flashbangs exploded from opposite corners. No shrapnel, just a deafening blast of pressure and sound that could scramble your brain for 30 seconds. They dropped like flies. My field became their nightmare, but I'd planned for this. While they flailed, I ducked under the side stair, rolled right, and hit the failsafe line. I hadn't tested in 2 years, a buried cable rigged to an old theft deterrent system for equipment haulers. Across the field, 4 directional sirens screamed to life, their piercing, oscillating wails bouncing off the barn, scattering echoes that turned the air into a disorienting hellscape. Twitchy guy staggered his rifle, half raised, blind as a bat. I closed the distance in a heartbeat, grabbed the barrel, twisted hard, and drove his shoulder into the gravel with my full weight. He didn't even fight back. The calm one spun to run, but froze dead in his tracks. Langston's cruiser rolled up, no siren, no lights, just his voice cutting through the chaos. Weapons down now. He stepped out, sidearm, drawn back up, right behind him. Real law, real response. Clipboard guy reached for something, but Langston wasn't playing. He fired a warning shot, not into the air, but into the dirt, a puff of dust exploding between the guy's boots. I said now, Langston barked. They dropped their weapons, every last one. 4 more figures emerged from the woods, hands raised, 7 in total, armed, poorly trained, but dangerous enough to make my skin crawl. Langston cuffed the first one, then turned to me, his face grim. "They're saying they're part of something bigger." I nodded, my jaw tight. They're not bluffing Karen, her playbook, her language, her followers. It was all part of something massive. Langston held up a badge he'd ripped from one of their vests, Enforcement Tier 1. Phase 4, certified. He looked at me, eyes searching. "You know what that means?" "I do now," I said, my voice low. Phase 4 was no joke. At the station, they processed all 7. Most clammed up, but the quiet one, he talked right before they loaded him into the cruiser. He locked eyes with me through the bars and smiled a chilling, knowing smirk. "Phase 4 isn't about you," he said. I didn't respond, but he kept going. "You think it ends here? You think this was about land?" He leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "It's about pattern disruption. You're not the enemy. You're the prototype." Then he winked and they hauled him away. Prototype. My blood ran cold. What the hell did that mean? We found more on them: forged IDs, detailed maps, training schedules, even a printed set of instructions for emergency engagement scenarios. One had a laminated citizen arrest card, like they thought they were real cops. But the most disturbing find? A group photo of 10 people all in vests with fake patches. Karen front and center with a title above Phase 4. Ground Team Unit 7, Unit 7. That meant there were at least 6 more teams out there. My stomach churned. How far did this web stretch? Later that night, Langston and I stood on my porch. Max at my feet, his fur still ruffled from the chaos. The air felt heavy like it hadn't exhaled yet. "You think they'll come again?" Langston asked, his voice quiet. "They won't stop," I said, staring into the dark. "Not until this goes public or I disappear." He shot me a sideways glance. "You got a plan?" I nodded toward the last uncracked drive on my table, its surface glinting in the moonlight. "It's labeled with my name." "You gonna open it?" he pressed. "Not yet," I said, my voice steady. He paused. "What are you waiting for?" I looked out across my field, the weight of it all settling in leverage. Because that drive held the final piece, and once I opened it, once I saw what they had on me, I wouldn't just be defending my land. I'd be ripping the truth out of the shadows. It wouldn't just end Karen's legacy, it might end mine. That drive sat on my kitchen table for 4 agonizing days, my name Callahan scrawled in Sharpie, no logo, no date, no context. I wasn't scared, but I knew clicking it open would change everything. Langston offered to run it through evidence systems, but I waved him off. "If they've been watching me this long, they deserve to see me staring back," I said, my resolve hardening. When I finally clicked it open, the screen flashed and a logo appeared. OPRM, Operational Rural Management, not HOA, not county, not even Karen Federal. A program I hadn't heard mentioned in a decade. One I knew because I'd helped write part of it. 12 years ago, I'd submitted a report outlining weaknesses in rural command structures, suggesting techniques for post-instability recalibration. They hadn't just used my report, they'd built this entire framework from it. My own words twisted against me. How could I have been so blind? The drive held 4 folders: Phase 1, Infiltration; Phase 2, Conditioning; Phase 3, Pressure; Phase 4, Correction; Inside Me drone footage; porch cams, audio from my barn, even conversations with Langston. Every file was labeled Subject Callahan, Classification, Autonomous, Strategic Influence Resistant. Then came the gut punch, a recording of my own voice from years ago, outlining protocols for managing outlier behavior clusters. They didn't just weaponize a system, they used my own damn blueprints. I felt sick, betrayed by my own past. Next were personnel files, Karen's HOA presidency. Funded, promoted, managed, all part of a beta rollout under a shell nonprofit. She wasn't the architect, she was the instrument. And me, I wasn't the enemy, I was the test. The final file, Message Tier Alpha, made my blood run cold. Karen appeared on screen, clean calm, smiling like she was delivering a church sermon. "If you're watching this, you've seen the truth." She said I didn't start this, but I believed in it. Still do. People like you. You don't obey, you disrupt. That's why we needed you. You showed us what resistance looks like and how to break it. She smiled and the screen cut to black. Break me. Not a chance. I sat in silence, not because I was broken, but because I was steady, my resolve like steel. Langston showed up an hour later, his boots heavy on the porch. "You opened it?" I nodded. "How bad? Bad enough?" He waited, eyes searching. "What now?" I ended, I said, my voice unwavering. I didn't run to the press. I went straight to the source. Filed a federal whistleblower complaint, redacted my neighbors' names, named the contractors, and attached every damning file. Then I hit publish and the story exploded. Former employees came forward. Oversight hearings opened and Karen indicted again, this time on federal charges. OPRM was officially decommissioned again. But paperwork doesn't stop ideology, and I knew this wasn't over. Things are quieter now. Max still limps, but he runs tail wagging like the fighter he is. The barn stands strong. The goats still yell their heads off, and my fences hold firm, but the weight, it never leaves. Sometimes Max growls when a truck slows at the gate, and my heart skips a beat. It never stops, but it pauses, giving me just enough room to breathe. I still get messages from strangers. It started here too. They called it a volunteer coalition. The documents looked real Anglophone, but we thought we were the only ones. They ask what to do, and I always say the same thing. Don't wait for someone else to fight your battle. If they've drawn the map, you're already on it. One final email was buried in the drive. Encrypted hidden deep, we cracked it. No body, no signature, just a subject line. Reassignment, pilot zone, Midwest, beta. No explanation, just coordinates for somewhere colder. Flatter, easier to disappear. Phase 4 didn't end here. It just moved down the list. They thought I was the glitch, the disruption, but I wasn't, not by a long shot.